The story kicks off in Las Vegas, where Fernando starts a conversation with a woman through a dating app. Simultaneously, Camila receives Fernando's message on the same dating app. Intrigued by his profile, and Camila likes it, setting the stage for their initial connection. They engage in a phone conversation, taking the opportunity to get to know each other better. As their interaction progresses, they decide to meet in person. Fernando, aware of Camila's tendency to cancel plans, emphasizes the importance of her actually showing up this time. Camila, while sharing some personal information, mentions that she works as a nurse, despite secretly being a stripper. Despite this revelation, she assures Fernando that she'll be punctual and agrees to meet him at a hotel. When Fernando finally lays eyes on Camila in person, a mischievous smile plays on his lips. Teasingly, he remarks that she might have deceived him or told a little white lie. Confused, Camila leans in, her voice low, and asks, "What did I do?" It's all part of Fernando's playful game, and he confesses that her real-life beauty surpasses the allure of her photos. As they settle into a more intimate atmosphere, their conversation takes a sensual turn. Fernando, his voice carrying a hint of desire, suggests that Camila might not be as interested in him as he thought, noting that she's the first Mexican girl to seemingly reject him. Camila, her eyes smoldering with attraction, swiftly corrects him, assuring him that rejection is far from her mind. She mentions that his real-life presence has left her pleasantly surprised, igniting a spark of desire. In the dimly lit club, they'd move to the dance floor, their bodies swaying sensuously to the rhythm of the music. Camila, overwhelmed by the magnetic pull between them, can hardly believe that someone as alluring as Fernando desires her. As the night deepens, Fernando leans in closer, and his voice husky with longing, invites her to join him at his hotel. It's a passionate beginning to a sizzling romance. In the midst of it all, Camila's ex-boyfriend, Vicente, spots them together. He quickly takes out his camera and begins to film them, his intense obsession with Camila becoming painfully evident. The following day, Camila receives a message from her friend, prompting her to get ready for training. She swiftly dresses and heads to the club, where she excitedly shares the details of her unforgettable night with Fernando among her friends. Camila senses that there's something profoundly special between them, a connection she's never experienced before. Meanwhile, Fernando confides in his friend about Camila, painting her as a truly unique individual. His friend inquires about Fernando's reaction when Camila revealed her profession, and Fernando confides that he believes she works as a nurse. As their relationship deepens, Fernando admits to his friend that he can't imagine his life without her by his side. Camila's heart races as she discovers her ex-boyfriend, Vicente, following her. With a surge of panic, she quickly exits her car and confronts him, delivering a firm warning that she'll involve the police if he persists. Vicente attempts to engage with her, but Camila stands her ground, shutting him down decisively. He spitefully predicts that her heart will one day suffer as his did, but Camila remains silent, prompting Vicente to eventually withdraw. Nonetheless, the encounter leaves Camila with a lingering, unshakable fear. At the hotel, Camila is pleasantly surprised to find Fernando eagerly awaiting her arrival, and he's prepared a heartwarming surprise for their day together by the sea. As the waves gently lap at the shore, Camila gathers the courage to share a vulnerable truth with Fernando. She confesses that she had concealed her occupation and admits to being a stripper. With a mix of anxiety and anticipation, she lets him know that she understands if this revelation changes things between them or if he feels it's best to part ways. However, instead of distancing himself, Fernando draws her close. He reassures her with a warm smile, expressing his gratitude for the opportunity to know her on a deeper level. In his eyes, her honesty only deepens their connection, and he eagerly looks forward to exploring their love story further. After spending 4 months at the hotel, Fernando returns to Las Vegas and Camilla fondly recalls their initial dinner together. She expresses her desire to introduce Fernando to her friends in her apartment, and Fernando agrees before hanging up. Camilla begins to prepare dinner, but at that moment, Vicenta calls her, inquiring if she is spending time with her lover, Fernando. Camilla becomes apprehensive and hangs up the phone without uttering a word. After preparing dinner and gathering with her friends, Camilla notices that Fernando is late and not answering her calls. She becomes increasingly sad, and days pass without any communication from him. Then, Fernando finally calls and offers his apologies. He explains that he had to travel to Colombia because his sister had a critical accident. He tells Camilla how much he misses her, apologizing once again for traveling without informing her. Camilla reassures him that she is always there for him and admits that she misses him too. She mentions how every place in the city reminds her of him. Camilla's friend is growing worried about her recent decisions. They sit down with a heavy heart, feeling the need to voice their concerns about Camilla's plan to travel to Colombia to be with Fernando. She can't help but reflecting on how rapidly their relationship is developing. It seems like just yesterday they met, and now Camilla is contemplating traveling across borders for someone she barely knows. With a deep sigh, Camilla's friend begins to ponder the situation, trying to strike a balance between care and caution. Camilla absorbs her concern and understands that she has to take a step back, think this through, and prioritize her safety and well-being above all else. But her feelings for Fernando are strong. As Camilla stands at the airport, preparing to leave, she calls Fernando and admits that she feels overwhelmed, confessing that her emotions led her to travel to him. After arriving in Colombia, she takes a taxi driven by a man named David, who kindly offers her his card, telling her to call if she needs anything. Camilla arrives at the hospital, expecting to meet Fernando, the plastic surgeon he had claimed to be. However, her shock is palpable as she realizes the person she's facing doesn't match her expectations. In a swift turn of events, she hurriedly shows the doctor pictures of Fernando from the dating app, attempting to explain the bewildering situation. The doctor, clearly puzzled, presses her for personal pictures of Fernando. Camilla hesitates, recalling how Fernando always avoided being photographed on her phone. She reluctantly conveys that she lacks any personal pictures of him, intensifying the enigma surrounding Fernando's true identity. Curious, Camilla asks the doctor about another plastic surgeon named Fernando, but he dismisses the possibility, explaining that the city is small, and if there were another surgeon by that name, he would have known him. Meanwhile, Camilla realizes that her wallet is missing, prompting her to contact David. Fortunately, David locates her wallet and returns it to her. In the midst of these developments, Camilla receives a call from Fernando, her boyfriend. He informs her that he saw her message, but is currently busy and unable to meet her. Apologetically, he asks her to return to her own country. Camilla agrees without revealing that she has discovered the truth about him. Distraught and silent, Camilla calls David to take her back to the airport. Along the way, her mind races, and she spots a sign by the roadside that triggers a memory of Fernando mentioning the place it advertises. Curious, she asks David about this location. He informs her that it's the most famous place in Colombia, a paradise for the wealthy. Intrigued, Camilla decides to visit this place and requests that David drive her there. Upon arrival, Camilla is taken aback to see Fernando with his wife and daughter. She is torn between confronting him and maintaining her composure, but David manages to calm her down. Just then, a man approaches them and reminds Camilla that a female client is scheduled to view the house in the area. Camilla seizes the opportunity, pretending that she and David are a married couple interested in the property. She asks David to assist her in the charade and promises to pay him in dollars. He agrees, and they both continue the act when the real estate agent arrives to show them the place. During the tour, the agent asks for their names, realizing they don't match the ones they initially provided. Camilla explains that they are not the names they first gave, but that they are genuinely interested in purchasing the property. As they discuss, Adrian, the son of Pedro, the owner of the place, appears. It becomes apparent that Adrian and the man who rented the place to Camila are friends. Adrian apologizes to Camila for the unexpected visit and explains that he was unaware of any appointments. Camila, still maintaining her facade, extends a friendly introduction to Adrian and subtly probes for information about the neighbors. Adrian casually mentions that his sister is none other than Angela, the neighbor Camila is so curious about. Her heart skips a beat as she absorbs this revelation. It turns out that Fernando's real name is Miguel, and he's married to Angela. Shocked and overwhelmed by sadness, Camila does her best to conceal her true emotions as Angela herself arrives on the scene. The sight of Fernando with his wife and children is a painful twist that Camila hadn't anticipated. Despite her inner turmoil, Camila manages to keep up appearances and continues with the charade. To salvage the situation, she decides to request David's assistance in finding a place to stay since her flight has already departed, leaving her stranded until the next day. David kindly agrees to help and offers to drive her to his grandmother's hotel. As they make their way, David, sensing Camila's distress, decides to offer some consolation. In a hushed tone, he lets slip the shocking revelation that Fernando is the good-hearted person Camila had believed him to be. Instead, he hints that Fernando is married to Pedro's daughter, implying that there might be more to his character and financial situation than what meets the eye. Meanwhile, we see Fernando spending time with Pedro, who informs him of his intention to appoint Fernando as the CEO of his company instead of his own daughter. Fernando is surprised and inquires about Adrian's opinion on the matter. Pedro reveals that Adrian has no interest in the company and is solely focused on his passion for cooking. Thrilled, Fernando accepts the offer to become Pedro's right-hand man. However, his excitement is short-lived when Pedro confesses that he was testing Fernando's loyalty to his daughter and has concluded that he lacks integrity. Pedro leaves Fernando in shock and disappointment. Later, Fernando's assistant shows him pictures of Camila and informs him that she is currently in Colombia, setting the stage for further developments in their complex relationship. Camila decides to explore the city with David, and they go out dancing in the street. During their outing, Adrian contacts Camila and invites her and David to the opening of his restaurant, and she accepts the invitation. As the night goes on, Camila opens up to David and confesses that she doesn't understand why Fernando lied to her. She expresses her determination to stay in Colombia until she uncovers the reason behind his deception. David is pleased to hear that she plans to stay in the country longer. At the restaurant, Camila observes Adrian's happiness on the occasion of his restaurant opening. However, he becomes upset when his father reminds him of the money he borrowed from him. Angela intervenes, trying to defuse the situation, and suggests that they shouldn't discuss money on such a special occasion. Camila eventually meets Pedro. Angela inquires about Camila's husband, and she fabricates a story, explaining that he is not as social as she is. Camila then asks Angela about Fernando's whereabouts, and Angela informs her that he has returned home because their son has injured his face. Feeling an urgent need, Camila calls David and asks him to join her quickly. She apologizes to the rest, citing an early work commitment as her reason for leaving. Pedro becomes curious and asks her about her profession. Camila lies again, claiming to work as a psychiatrist. She bids farewell to everyone and departs from the restaurant. As Camila is leaving, the doorman contacts Fernando and informs him that a pediatrician is waiting outside. Fernando calls Angela and inquires if they are expecting a doctor's visit for their children. Simultaneously, Camila unexpectedly enters Fernando's house, surprising him. He hastily ends his call with Angela and urges Camila to leave because his children are inside. Camila, however, refuses to leave and insists on learning the reason behind his betrayal. Fernando finally confesses and reveals that it all began as a game. One day, he saw the real Dr. Fernando and noticed the respect he received, which made him envious of his freedom. He uploaded his picture on the dating app, and although their relationship started as a lie, he emphasizes that everything they had was real and his feelings for her were genuine. He declares that he will never forget her. Camila, somewhat amused, reminds him that he forgot and got married, and now he even has children. At that moment, Angela arrives home, causing Fernando to panic and urgently request that Camila leave. As Camila departs, Fernando's son glimpses her, albeit unable to discern her face clearly, only noticing her dress. Fernando is taken aback when his son asks him about the woman. The next day, Fernando visits the janitor and informs him that there has been a break-in at his house. He expresses concern that Pedro will evict the janitor if he doesn't fulfill his duties properly. Fernando requests that all camera recordings be deleted and kept confidential, urging the janitor not to disclose this to anyone. At the company, Fernando decides to call Camila, apologizing and expressing concern for her well-being as she is in a foreign country. He suggests meeting alone to talk privately. However, Camila remains silent and hangs up on him. David arrives to accompany her for the day, and she expresses her gratitude, admitting that she would have felt lost in the foreign country without his support. Meanwhile, Camila receives a message from her friend containing a video that shocks her. Fernando has uploaded the video on the internet, leaving Camila stunned. She and David arrive at the house they plan to rent. Simultaneously, Fernando also arrives and discovers that they are neighbors. Angela introduces them to each other, informing Fernando that David is Camila's husband. In his office, Pedro observes the situation and instructs his assistant, Tina, to install surveillance cameras in Camila's house. Tina initially hesitates, citing the illegality of such an action, but eventually agrees to comply with Pedro's request. Later, Fernando goes to Camila's house and asks her to open the door so they can talk. Camila becomes nervous upon hearing his voice. Fernando appears anxious and inquires about her presence in the neighborhood. He offers her a sum of money, urging her to move out quickly. Camila, however, decides to play along and demands more money. Fernando apologizes once again and asks what she wants from him. Camila insults him and accuses him of uploading a video of her to a porn site. She splashes water on his face, but Fernando denies any involvement, claiming that his phone must have been hacked. Camila remains skeptical and insists that he delete the video from the internet, warning him that she is now his neighbor. David arrives, greets Fernando, and later sits with Camila. Camila proposes to pay David double the taxi fare if he helps her by pretending to be her husband. David agrees and expresses his need for more information about Fernando. Camila explains that she has been unable to uncover any real information about him, as everything she knows appears to be false. On the following day, Camila receives a call from an unknown number, and she becomes shocked when she hears Vicent's voice. Without saying a word, she abruptly hangs up the call. David and Camila decide to make their fake marriage look real by posting pictures of themselves on their social media accounts, portraying a happy and loving couple. This strategy is meant to convince their neighbors to rent the house to them. When they venture outside together, Angela approaches them for a conversation. Fernando, noticing their interaction, hides from their view. During this time, their neighbor Luigi and his wife join the conversation. Luigi is a friend of Fernando's, and he becomes visibly upset when he sees Camila. Angela invites Camila to their house for lunch, and she accepts, expressing her desire to get to know her neighbors better. Luigi becomes increasingly worried, fearing that Fernando's wife might have discovered his Las Vegas activities. He implores Fernando to act swiftly, but Fernando is uncertain about what to do and believes he cannot force Camila out of the house. Camila arrives at Angela's house for lunch, and Lucas, Fernando's son, is shocked when he sees her. During the meal, Camila engages in relaxed conversation, laughing with her hosts and expressing gratitude for the invitation. She suggests taking Angela's little daughter with her, prompting Angela to agree. While Angela dresses her daughter, Camila seizes the opportunity to explore the house further. She manages to obtain the key to Fernando's closet and, upon opening it, is met with the scent of his clothes. Pedro enters and inquires if she likes the fragrance. Camila offers a quick excuse, claiming she wants to buy a similar perfume for her husband. After changing into a swimsuit, she rejoins the group downstairs, leaving everyone in awe of her beauty. Fernando, feeling nervous, excuses himself and leaves the gathering. Lucas, Fernando's son, strikes up a conversation with Camila, asking if she has a relationship with his father, citing that he has seen them together. Camila vehemently denies any involvement and insists that it's all in Lucas's imagination. Lucas goes on to reveal that she isn't the only one his father had a relationship with, disclosing that Fernando had an affair with their neighbor. Meanwhile, David approaches Fernando and confronts him about his affair with David's wife at the club. Fernando abruptly leaves the conversation. When Camila returns home, David shares everything he has discovered with her, including the fact that Fernando has been on the dating app for 2 years, but hadn't talked to anyone else except her. David then heads to his grandmother's house. That night, as Camila settles into bed to sleep, an intruder enters her house with the intention of installing surveillance cameras. She hears faint noises and, becoming alarmed, gets out of bed to investigate. She is shocked to find items scattered on the ground, and fear starts to creep in. Panicking, she calls out for David, but her terror intensifies when she sees Fernando standing before her. Camila demands an explanation for Fernando's presence in her bedroom, to which he responds that he doesn't know and insists that he didn't enter her room intentionally. He then reveals that he has taken steps to remove the videos from the internet. Fernando pleads with Camila not to inform his wife about their past relationship and promises that he won't engage in such behavior with other women. Camila tells him that her admiration for him was not based on his money or wealth, but on the perception that he was a genuine, honest, and sincere person. Fernando approaches her, rekindling their connection. Unbeknownst to Camila, Lucas was the one who entered her house and placed the surveillance camera, and he is now monitoring the situation. Meanwhile, Angela is deeply shocked when she enters her son's room and discovers him harming himself by cutting his arteries. Simultaneously, she becomes aware of her husband's involvement with Camila. Angela rushes her son to the hospital, where the doctor recommends that he seek help from a psychiatrist. When asked about the reason for their son's behavior, Angela struggles to articulate the truth. Upon returning home, Angela has a private conversation with her son and urges him to be honest with her about everything. He expresses his desire for her to expel his father from the house, believing that Fernando doesn't deserve someone like her. Angela is emotionally torn but manages to maintain her composure, assuring her son that she appreciates his concern while expressing her worries about his well-being. Pedro becomes aware that his grandson, Lucas, was responsible for placing the surveillance cameras in Camila's house. He contacts his daughter, Angela, seeking the truth about the situation. Angela, however, chooses to lie to her father, concealing the full story from him. Angela pleads with her son not to share the video with anyone and advises him not to attempt to watch it again, as it is harmful to him. She requests his promise, and Lucas agrees, but only on the condition that she divorces his father. Fernando enters the room and tries to engage in conversation with Lucas, but his son ignores him. He then kisses his mother on the cheek and exits the room. The following day, Camila informs the security guard that her house was broken into. The guard promises to review the surveillance footage to identify the intruder. Luigi becomes increasingly impatient with Fernando's predicament. Fernando confides that he cannot distance himself from Camila, to which Luigi insists that if he chooses to return, he must expel Camila from his life entirely. Upon learning that Camila reported the break-in at her house, Fernando calls her and suggests they discuss the matter. Camila, however, refuses, stating that their past involvement was a mistake and that it will not happen again. She abruptly ends the call. Lucas's teacher contacts Angela to report that Lucas did not attend class. Tina, a member of the household staff, is sent to speak with Lucas and inform him that his grandfather wishes to see him. Lucas meets with his grandfather and admits to placing the cameras, explaining that he did it to help him. Pedro expresses his trust in Lucas, but emphasizes the importance of discontinuing the camera broadcasts. Lucas reveals that he wants to protect his mother from harm by getting rid of his father. Camila purchases a new car, which piques David's curiosity about her sudden influx of money. She explains that she has been working tirelessly since she was a child and has never spent money on herself. As they converse, the security guard interrupts, informing Camila that no one has entered her house except for Fernando, who appears to be investigating the cameras and their recordings. When Angela visits the company, she confides in her father, Pedro, about her plans to take her son to a psychiatrist. Pedro inquires about the reason behind Lucas's self-harming behavior, and Angela continues to withhold the truth, maintaining her deception. Her father questions her ambition to succeed him in running the company, expressing concern about her choice of husband. Angela emphasizes that her husband is the father of her grandchildren, but her father wishes she had shared the truth with him sooner. Angela leaves her father feeling upset. Camila visits a resort within the complex and informs the receptionist that she is new and wants to explore the area. She takes the opportunity to discreetly enter the men's room, where she searches for and finds Fernando's safe. Inside, she discovers a notebook and takes a look at its contents before returning it to the safe to avoid suspicion. However, Luigi, who works with Fernando, begins to suspect that someone has tampered with the safe's contents and questions Fernando about his recent presence at the resort. When Camila returns to her home, she examines a picture she found in the safe. It's a photograph of a woman, and on the back, a message reads, "Do you still remember me?" Camila tries to identify the woman in the photo, but is unable to. Lucas, who has been watching Camila through the surveillance cameras, suddenly loses the feed. Curious and alarmed, he decides to go to Camila's house. Camila awakens from her sleep to the sound of Lucas's voice, but she is terrified when she sees him wearing a mask and loses her balance, falling to the ground. Upon returning home, Lucas lies to his father about his whereabouts, claiming he was with friends. However, he becomes angry and confrontational, threatening to expose his father's affair with Camila if he doesn't leave his room. Fernando attempts to calm his son down, but Lucas insists that he wants nothing to do with him and demands he leave. As Camila regains consciousness, she realizes she is severely injured and bleeding. She rushes out of her house, calling for help. Meanwhile, Angela, Fernando's wife, is having an affair with Angie, her brother's friend. Fernando wakes up to the sound of an ambulance and learns that Camila has been injured. He is shocked to discover that there is no one to accompany her to the hospital. In the hospital, Camila experiences flashbacks of her past, recalling instances of her father abusing her mother and her subsequent act of self-defense, which led to her mother's imprisonment. The next day, David watches the news of Camila's injury on TV. Meanwhile, Angela continues her affair with Angie, driven by her husband's infidelity. David goes to the hospital to bring Camila back home. Camila instructs him to fabricate a story to explain her injuries, involving his absence from the house during the incident. David apologizes to her for their previous disagreement over Fernando, and she forgives him, saying she has forgotten about it. Camila, after returning home from the hospital, promptly informs the police about Vicent's threatening messages. She explains to the officer that Vicente had mentioned being very close to her in his last message. the security guard interjects, stating that no one had entered the house except for Fernando. However, Camila vehemently defends Fernando, asserting that it couldn't be him, and she is convinced that Vicente is responsible. She mentions that Vicente had previously assaulted her, rendering her unconscious. Unbeknownst to Camila, Lucas is monitoring the situation through the surveillance cameras. He becomes increasingly anxious and decides to inform his mother of the unfolding events. Angela advises him that the police lack evidence linking him to the incident and reassures him that they cannot search her house without a warrant. Pedro pays Camila a visit to check on her well-being, and Angela joins them under the pretense of expressing concern. Camila is shocked to learn that Vicente has arrived in Colombia. The following day, Angela attends a meeting with Fernando and Luigi. Pedro hands them an envelope, prompting Fernando's confusion when he discovers a photograph of Camila inside. Pedro informs them that Camila is a well-known stripper. Angela is visibly irritated by her father's behavior, admonishing him for prying into people's personal lives and potential scandals. Fernando intervenes, agreeing with Pedro about looking into their neighbors' backgrounds. However, Angela rebuffs him, emphasizing that they should not spread such information about Camila, as it could lead to widespread shame. After Angela departs, Pedro jokingly asks Fernando and Luigi which one of them had a relationship with Camila during their time in Las Vegas. Fernando, flustered, denies any involvement, and Pedro laughs it off as a jest. Meanwhile, Camila visits the resort and inquires about the woman in the picture. She discovers that the woman's name is Comina and that she used to work at the resort. Furthermore, Camila obtains Comina's contact number and address. The story continues to unfold with intricate connections and evolving relationships. Angela becomes furious with her son Lucas for his actions against Camila, and she demands that he show her where the laptop he used to spy on Camila is located. Lucas nervously reveals that it's under the bed. Anxious about the consequences, Lucas asks his mother what will happen next, to which she reassures him that everything will be fine, and they'll carry on as usual. Lucas, however, insists on expelling his father from the house, and Angela agrees to do so. Unbeknownst to them, Fernando is eavesdropping on their conversation, hearing their plans. Luigi and his wife pay a visit to Fernando and Angela, knocking on the door with anger and frustration. It is revealed that Lucas sent videos of Camila changing clothes to their children. Fernando promises to look into the matter and speak with his son. Luigi's wife emphasizes the seriousness of the situation and leaves in disappointment. Fernando enters Lucas's room to have a conversation with him, acknowledging that he was once Lucas's age and understands his struggles. However, Lucas distances himself from his father, creating a noticeable rift between them. Camila contacts Comina and asks about a mutual friend between them. When she mentions Fernando's name, Comina is visibly terrified, causing her to drop a cup. The following day, Fernando prepares breakfast for his family, expressing his desire to take care of them. He enters Lucas's room and retrieves the laptop from under the bed, proceeding to watch the surveillance camera recordings. Lucas storms into the room, shouting at his father. Fernando becomes enraged, revealing that Lucas was the one who assaulted and beat Camila. He physically chastises his son, prompting Angela to intervene and protect Lucas. She takes the laptop and shows Fernando the intimate scenes he had with Camila, explaining that their son witnessed these events, which fueled his hatred towards his father. Angela shouts at Fernando, expressing her hatred and holding him responsible for the family's turmoil. Their young daughter enters the room, and Angela composes herself, explaining that adults sometimes have disagreements, which is a normal part of family life. She then takes their children to school. Fernando refuses to return Lucas's mobile phone, stating that he will consider it when Lucas learns to respect others. Lucas becomes upset and exits the car. Later, Fernando and Angela go to the company, where Fernando attempts to speak with Angela. She becomes increasingly angry, accusing him of being incapable of leading a normal life without infidelity and affairs outside their marriage. Fernando tries to explain himself, but Angela refuses to listen, interrupting him and declaring that she can no longer tolerate his actions. She requests a divorce, believing that all he cares about is the company and money. Camila's determination to uncover the truth about Fernando's past relationships and intentions is unwavering. She stumbles upon a picture of Comina in Fernando's safe, a discovery that leaves her with many questions. When her attempts to contact Comina go unanswered, Camila hatches a plan. She asks David to wait for her outside the restaurant, providing her with the opportunity to approach Comina discreetly and hopefully gain her trust for an open conversation. She finally meets Comina, introducing herself and explaining the discovery of the picture in Fernando's safe. With a mixture of curiosity and apprehension, she asks her to share her story about her relationship with Fernando, and she begins by revealing her dissatisfaction with her life and marriage, which drives her to create a profile on a dating app. She describes how Fernando, masquerading as a plastic surgeon, enters her life, and they embark on a relationship. However, guilt weighs heavily on her as she is still married with a family. Eventually, she musters the courage to tell Fernando that she wants to end their affair. What surprises her is Fernando's sudden change of heart. He expresses his intention to leave his wife for her, causing Comina to contemplate divorce and leaving her daughter for him. Yet, Fernando's decision wavers, and he chooses to remain with his kids. Camila absorbs the story, realizing that her own experience with Fernando is different. Comina confides that Fernando has convinced her of a unique connection, one he claims to have never felt before with any other woman. Camila feels a profound impact from this revelation, but Comina goes on to explain that Fernando's love is shallow. He is primarily interested in Pedro's wealth. As they converse, an observer sent by Fernando discreetly watches them both, reporting their discussion back to him. Fernando, speaking with Luigi, expresses his intent to return to Camila, fearing that his wife, Angela, has discovered his Las Vegas secrets. He believes that Pedro might evict them if he learns of their past actions. Camila later shares the details of her encounter with Comina with David, discussing her intentions moving forward. She harbors a strong desire for Fernando not to harm other women as he has done to her. While immersed in their conversation, they notice a man filming them, who turns out to be Tina, a woman Camila had met at the club where she used to dance. Upon returning home, Camila receives an invitation from Pedro to attend a party he is hosting. Fernando is reluctant to go to the party, and Angela persuades him to attend, emphasizing that her father is in high spirits and she doesn't want to bring up the topic of their divorce at the moment. She instructs Fernando to prepare for the party and also discusses how she plans to explain their divorce to their children. Fernando tries to talk to Lucas, his son, who expresses his strong dislike for him and determination to remove him from the house. The strained relationship between father and son continues to deteriorate. Camila, accompanied by David, attends Pedro's party. Unbeknownst to her, Vicente is the driver sent by Pedro to pick them up. Angela is shocked when she sees Camila at the party, and Pedro takes the opportunity to have a private conversation with Camila, mentioning that he is aware of her profession as a stripper. This revelation leaves Camila surprised and confused. Camila attempts to speak with Angela, but Angela remains dismissive and belittles her. Camila, overwhelmed by her emotions, tries to explain that she doesn't want to hurt Angela, emphasizing their shared humanity as women. At the party, Luigi's wife learns about Camila's profession as a stripper and attempts to humiliate her. However, Camila refuses to be shamed and confidently responds to her provocations, asserting that she knows her type of woman. She also ends up getting drunk during the event. Angela decides to leave the party, and her father follows her, urging her to tell him the truth. Angela reveals that she asked Fernando for a divorce, and her father expresses relief and support, assuring her that he will make Fernando regret his actions. Camila, overwhelmed by her emotions, goes to the restroom and breaks down in tears. Fernando finds her there, and Camila confronts him, revealing that she knows everything from Comina. She threatens to continue exposing him until he loses his mind. Despite Fernando's attempt to approach her and kiss her, Camila rejects his advances with disgust. Luigi's wife witnesses this encounter and confronts Fernando about what she saw. However, he dismisses her and refuses to justify his actions. When Pedro overhears their argument, Luigi's wife expresses her desire for Camila to be expelled from the complex, citing her as a danger to the children. Pedro, rather than expelling Camila, decides to resolve the situation by suggesting that he will fire Luigi from the company, prompting them to find another place to live. He asserts that Camila is a resident of the complex and will not be expelled. Camila, feeling tired, decides to leave the party and wait for a taxi. Pedro notices her and offers to have his driver take her home. Unbeknownst to her, the driver is actually her ex-boyfriend, Vicente. He offers her water, which she drinks, not recognizing him. As she starts to feel dizzy and notices that the driver is taking a different route, she becomes alarmed and tries to open the car door. However, she is unable to do so and eventually faints. Meanwhile, Angela is at home with her children, comforting them and assuring them that they will be fine. David, concerned about Angela's whereabouts, calls her but receives no response. Worried, he reports her disappearance to the police. The police then go to Pedro's house to question him. Pedro claims that it's impossible for Angela to have disappeared because he sent his driver with her. When asked about his trust in the driver, Tina, the assistant, vouches for him, stating that he has been working for them for 6 years. However, Tina receives a call informing her that the driver did not return home the previous night. Candela wakes up to find herself next to Vicente, who informs her that he has kidnapped her with the intention of returning to their home country together. Meanwhile, Angela and Adrian are having a conversation by the swimming pool. Angela reveals that she is getting a divorce from Fernando due to his infidelity with their new neighbor, as well as with their previous neighbor. Adrian expresses surprise, as he had always believed Fernando to be a devoted husband and ideal father. Angela's revelation shocks him. Candela pleads with Vicente to let her go, feeling suffocated and frightened. He claims that he's doing all of this out of love for her and to protect her. Camila insists that they have been separated for a long time, but he doesn't listen and continues to pursue her. She tries to get away from him and manages to hit him before running, but he catches up to her. Meanwhile, Fernando approaches Angela and offers to give up everything, even resign from the company, to prove his commitment to her and their family. Angela informs him that she has spoken to her father and brother about their impending divorce, and she won't be deceived by his victim act. Camila, riding with Vicente, recalls his past jealousy and abusive behavior. She secretly sends her location to David through her mobile, but Vicente notices and throws the phone out of the car. When David receives the message, he rushes out and encounters Fernando on the way. David informs Fernando that Candela has been kidnapped, and they decide to go after her together. Candela screams at Vicente that she doesn't love him, and when they hear a police siren approaching, she attacks him, forcing him to pull over. She escapes from the car and runs toward David in fear. Angela learns that Anita works in the complex and asks him to quit his job to avoid anyone finding out about their relationship. She gives him money as compensation, and they share a kiss. Unbeknownst to them, someone is watching and taking photos of their encounter. Camila experiences a nightmare but wakes up screaming. David is there and offers her a glass of juice to calm her down. He tries to make her laugh by joking about her taste in men, and they share a moment of laughter. David confesses that he likes her. It is revealed that Tina was the one who brought Vicente to Colombia. Pedro asks her to rectify her mistake and get him out of prison, as his presence is considered a danger and a mistake for them. Candela calls her mother in prison and expresses her concern, vowing to do whatever it takes to get her out. She cries during the call, and hearing a knock at the door, abruptly ends the conversation. She opens the door to find Fernando standing there. He informs her that it was his son who assaulted her and knocked her to the ground, and he proceeds to remove all the surveillance cameras from her house. Meanwhile, Lucas becomes aware that his father is at their neighbor's house and informs his mother. When Fernando leaves Camila's house, Luigi and his wife witness the encounter. Luigi's wife begins hurling insults and objects at Camila. The following day, Luigi's wife goes to Angela's house and reveals that she has filed a police report against Camila. When Fernando enters, he overhears her discussing her intentions to expel Camila. He informs her that she cannot do so because Pedro will not allow it. He then goes to his son and asks for the laptop. Camila visits the company to meet with Angela and tries to explain everything to her. However, Angela remains unconvinced and calls for the security guards to escort Camila out. Camila leaves on her own. In the meantime, Lucas confides in his grandfather about his father removing the surveillance cameras from Camila's house and taking the laptop. Pedro questions Lucas about whether he revealed that he was the one who bought the cameras, but Lucas claims that nobody knows except for him. He explains that he told his mother he purchased the cameras with his pocket money. Fernando learns from Luigi that the cameras his son placed in Camila's house belong to the company Pedro deals with. As he leaves the company, he spots Lucas in one of Pedro's cars, but is unable to catch up to them. He confronts Pedro about his involvement with his son and accuses him of buying the cameras, not Lucas. Pedro denies the accusation and warns Fernando about his behavior. Fernando emphasizes that Pedro should stay away from his family and never manipulate them again. He returns home and informs Angela that her father bought the cameras, but she refuses to believe him. This leads to a heated argument, during which Fernando throws his marriage ring at her and leaves. Camila returns home and confides in David about her encounter with Vicente. She reassures him that his confession of feelings did not bother her, and they continue their conversation. However, she receives a call from the police requesting her presence at the department. At the police station, Camila is informed that Vicente wishes to speak with her before he confesses. Reluctantly, she agrees to meet with him in the interrogation room. Vicente warns her to return to Las Vegas, as he claims to have been paid by a dangerous gang that could harm her anytime. Camila questions him about the identity of these people, and Vicente discloses that they funded his trip. He also mentions that there is a woman who paid him to come and watch her as well. Camila, frightened, pleads with him to leave her alone once he is released from jail. Meanwhile, Angela visits her father's house and is taken aback when she sees the monitors displaying surveillance footage from the complex. She begins to realize the extent of her father's obsession with monitoring everyone. As Camila exits the police station, she spots Tina and quickly hides from her. She reflects on their encounter in Las Vegas and how Tina revealed Fernando's deceit, ultimately advising her to go to Colombia to uncover the truth herself. The investigation into Vicente's case continues, but news suddenly emerges that he has been released on bail. Angela, increasingly suspicious of her father, attempts to understand what is happening. Pedro explains that it was Lucas who came to him, seeking help due to stress and distraction. However, Angela remains unconvinced, believing her father is hiding something from her. After Vicente's release from prison, he contacts Tina and threatens to expose her if she doesn't help him. In response, Tina goes to his room and incapacitates him, first by electrocution and then by suffocation. She leaves the room after ensuring he is unconscious. The next day, Camila receives a message from Fernando, instructing her to meet him to obtain the recordings from the monitoring cameras. Meanwhile, Pedro confides in Tina about his daughter's persistence in uncovering the truth. Tina advises him to tell Angela everything, but Pedro is reluctant, fearing the consequences and the impact on his grandchildren. Angela confides in Adrian about her suspicions regarding their father's secret and his long-standing acquaintance with Camila. When Camila meets Fernando to retrieve the laptop containing the surveillance footage, he warned her not to break it, as they plan to take it to a technical expert to identify anyone who accessed the recordings. Angela visits her father's house and encounters Tina instead of him. She expresses her disapproval of Tina's relationship with her father and reminds her of her role as an employee. Tina, unapologetic, warns Angela to grow up and reveals that she is aware of Angela's relationship with Anita. She threatens to expose their pictures together if Angela continues to interfere. A police officer goes to Vicente's residence and discovers his lifeless body. Upon reviewing security footage, they find evidence that Vicente had been taking heroin, although the dose shouldn't have been lethal. Camila is summoned to the police station and questioned about her connection to Vicente and Tina. She listens to the last recorded conversation between her and Vicente and denies any knowledge of Tina's involvement. She maintains that she doesn't know anyone named Tina. The next day, Fernando confronts Camila about her awareness of the surveillance cameras at her house and suggests that Pedro might have asked her to install them. He accuses her of hiding something and shows her the video of her meeting Tina, pressing her to reveal the truth. Camila recalls her interactions with Tina but denies any wrongdoing, claiming that Tina was merely helping her settle into the complex. Fernando remains skeptical and questions why she came to Colombia in the first place. Meanwhile, David observes their conversation and becomes frustrated, ultimately leaving the scene. Luigi's wife visits Angela's house to show her the video featuring Camila, which she discovered on her husband's phone. Desperate, Camila attempts to reach out to Fernando but receives no response. She leaves him a message expressing her desire to talk. Camila then calls Tina, expressing her wish to abandon the mission and return to her home country. Tina reminds her of the contract she signed and insists that Camila must continue her mission, emphasizing her importance at this stage. Angela contacts Fernando and invites him to attend her inauguration ceremony as the chairman of the company council, mentioning that it was their daughter's request. She also realizes that Luigi is the one who uploaded Camila's video to the adult website. At the party, Fernando attends but keeps his distance, feeling marginalized and unimportant. Angela spots Camila's presence and becomes flustered, interrupting her speech to question her father about the invitation. Pedro denies inviting Camila and suggests that Fernando might have been responsible. Angela witnesses Camila talking to Fernando, and then Fernando striking Luigi in the face due to the video Luigi uploaded to the adult website. Police arrive at the scene and arrest Fernando for impersonation. It is revealed that Angela was the one who convinced Fernando, the real doctor, to report his impersonator to the police. Meanwhile, Tina and Anita meet with Camila. Pedro urges them to continue their mission, revealing that he has brain cancer and will die within 3 months. He insists that they must hurry to divorce Fernando from his daughter. Pedro gives Camila 1 week to evaluate the mission, promising her a life of independence if she succeeds. The following day, Angela secures Fernando's release from prison with the help of a lawyer she hired. She chastises him for inviting Camila to the party and informs him that her father was responsible for the invitation. Angela then spends time with Auntie, but their encounter is interrupted when her father arrives and becomes confrontational. Angela intervenes and prevents violence, urging Auntie to leave. Her father threatens to expose their affair to the company's board of directors, but Angela retaliates by declaring her intention to seize control of the company and revealing her father's past infidelity. She warns him that he has no authority over the board anymore and that she could destroy his empire if he doesn't leave her in her new position. When Angela returns home, Camila notices her crying and decides to approach her. She informs Angela that her father paid her to separate Angela from her husband. Initially, Angela laughs it off and doesn't believe her. However, her demeanor changes abruptly when she learns that her father is on the brink of death with very little time left. In an unexpected turn of events, Angela becomes overwhelmed with emotions and impulsively pushes Camila into the pool, where Camila begins to drown. In a desperate act of self-defense, Angela stabs Camila in the back. Panicking, Angela calls Fernando for help. When Fernando arrives, Angela confesses to him that she has killed Camila. She implores him to dispose of the body, arguing that he bears responsibility since he was the one who brought Camila to their location. Fernando shifts the blame onto Angela's father, claiming that he was the mastermind behind Camila's presence. He mentions having documents and evidence to support his claim. Angela, still shaken, pleads with Fernando to move the body to their abandoned farm, which has been deserted for a decade, making it an ideal hiding place. Fernando carefully loads Camila's lifeless body into his car, and as he does, Angela expresses her gratitude with a kiss. Afterward, Angela meticulously cleans the blood from the pool and the floor, ensuring no trace of the violent incident remains. She then proceeds to delete all the recordings from the surveillance cameras. The following day, David visits Camila's house but finds it empty. When Fernando returns home, he begins to worry about the potential consequences if the police discover any evidence or the surveillance footage indicating that Camila entered their home but never left. Angela reassures him, explaining that she has taken care of the recordings. Shortly thereafter, David approaches Angela and Fernando, inquiring about Camila's whereabouts. They feign surprise and concern about her sudden disappearance. Angela confronts her father, condemning his actions in the name of protecting her. She reminds him that her mother left him due to his betrayal and deceit. In a fit of anger, Angela admits to killing their neighbor, Camila, because of her father's involvement and credits Fernando for disposing of the body. She insists that he must bear the consequences and also express gratitude for his role. David later visits Fernando's house, revealing that he found Camila's laptop at her residence. During his investigation, he stumbles upon the surveillance footage, which shows Camila visiting Pedro's house. Fernando, seemingly taken aback, plays a voice message sent by Camila shortly before her disappearance, where she expresses her fear and belief that her life is in danger. Angela and Fernando head to Pedro's office at the company. Pedro tries to reassure them, emphasizing that without a body, there is a weak case against them. However, he accuses Fernando of being involved in Camila's disappearance. Fernando vehemently denies any involvement in her murder, asserting that he wasn't present when it happened. Fernando's anger escalates, leading Pedro to threaten him with imprisonment if he doesn't remain silent. Fernando responds defiantly, suggesting that he has little to lose as he believes his life is nearing its end. Meanwhile, the police approach David and inform him about a reservation made in Camila's name for 2 hotel rooms. David claims to have no knowledge of this reservation. During their journey, Fernando decides to inquire about Angela's relationship with Antir. Angela retorts that Antir likely expects an apology from her. Fernando then drops a bombshell by revealing that Angela's father had hired Antir to work at her brother's restaurant. This revelation infuriates Angela, and she sharply instructs Fernando to stay silent. As the tension in the car continues to rise, Fernando becomes increasingly agitated and threatens to report Angela to the police before his father does. A heated argument ensues, leading to a catastrophic accident. Angela manages to escape from the vehicle, but Fernando pleads for her assistance. Angela, in a shocking turn of events, refuses to help him and leaves the scene just before the car explodes. At Fernando's funeral, Angela mourns her loss, and it's revealed that her leg is broken. The police arrive, causing Pedro to fear that they have come to arrest his daughter. However, to everyone's surprise, they arrest Tina for Vicente's murder instead. Upon returning home, Angela is shocked to find Camila standing before her. It's as though Camila has returned from the dead. The narrative then shifts back to the day Camila was supposedly killed. Fernando takes her to the farm, where he grieves over her apparent death. However, it's soon revealed that Camila is not actually dead. She reassures Fernando and mentions that Angela seemed indifferent to whether she lived or died. Camila explains that her intentions were not malicious when she sought to reveal the truth to Angela. Fernando promises to return to Angela and mislead her while vowing to protect his children. He assures Camila that she's safe in this place and intends to book 2 rooms at a hotel, emphasizing that he won't let her down this time. After Fernando leaves, Camila hears Tina's voice. Camila searches for Tina and finds her, tying her to a chair. She confronts Tina, asking if she, too, wanted to kill her. Tina responds that she would gain nothing from killing someone who is already dead. Camila questions how she can trust and love Fernando again. In response, Tina reveals that Camila doesn't know anything about her, but Camila insists she knows everything about Tina since her birth. Camila then learns that Tina is the one who killed Vicente. Tina informs Camila that she plans to leave her there to die of hunger and exits the scene. However, Camila is determined and manages to escape, contacting David, who promptly comes to her aid and embraces her. She inquires about Fernando and is devastated to learn that he died in a car accident. In the present day, a shocking revelation unfolds when Fernando reveals to Angela that he didn't die either. Angela, terrified and panicked, raises a pistol at both of them. Fear grips them as they realize their lives are in jeopardy. Fernando urgently implores Angela to listen, revealing that her father was the mastermind behind everything. He discloses that Angela's mother had an affair with another man, leading to the birth of a boy who is now Fernando's friend, making him Angela's brother. Just as this revelation sinks in, Pedro bursts into the scene and attacks Fernando. Angela fires her gun repeatedly in the chaos, inadvertently injuring Camila in the leg. Camila and Fernando tumble off the balcony, while Pedro collapses and succumbs to his injuries. Angela, overwhelmed with hysteria and guilt, realizes she has killed her own father, who dies before her eyes. The police arrive to arrest Angela, and we later see paramedics transporting Camila and Fernando to the hospital on stretchers. Sometime later, Adrian visits his sister in jail. Angela inquires about their father's funeral, and Adrian informs her that he was the only one who attended. Angela breaks into tears and expresses her determination to honor her father's memory and work toward a better future once she is released from prison. Camila's journey to recovery continues at the hospital as she works on regaining her ability to walk. It's revealed that she and David are in a loving relationship. One day, Camila spots Fernando in the distance, and a warm smile passes between them. After her release from prison, Camila, accompanied by David, visits her mother. Tears flow as they share a heartfelt hug, reuniting after a long and tumultuous period of separation. As life gradually returns to normal, Camila is back at the club, dancing once again. David and her mother watch proudly from the sidelines. From a distance, Fernando observes Camila, reflecting on the events that have transpired and the journey they've all been through.